All right. Welcome to Shop Talk episode 3. So we've got some improvements to talk about, and there's even more improvements coming. Really taking this super seriously. Why is that so funny to me? So as you can see, now we've got our little product cam here. So we can talk about components, we can talk about games, and we can feature them. Emily has a plea for Coca-Cola to sponsor the show. Coca-Cola, if you want to get on this sweet sponsorship, get in on the ground level of this thing because it is blowing up. We're down up to
going places.
2 viewers in Twitch now.
So me and Abe.
Yep, that's right. That is 100% right. Yeah, so we're here, episode 3. The other I was talking about upgrades. So we got the product cam. We replaced the shop cam. It got a little too awkward. We had our legal representatives tell us that maybe that might be an invasion of people's privacy. We don't want to blow up the spot of people that are coming in just to try to buy games. So that's gone. That's dead. Nobody gets to see Abe dance again. So congratulations for those of you who tuned in to episode 1 and got to see Abe's dance.
Yeah.
But now we can show you close-ups of games and such, which is really cool. And my hands. You can see my hands moving around the stream. We've also been told that when I do this, really bad for the podcast, so we're going to try to not do that. Probably not going to happen, but we'll at least say that we're not going to do that so that Joe can feel a little bit better. I know that it doesn't help when I talk when I'm doing it. Like if we just do it while you're talking, then you can feed out my thing.
Yeah. Keep your arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times, please, sir.
There's a lot of safety requirements when you're streaming on Twitch and recording a podcast. And then Abe is working on getting us some overlays, which I guess all of the Twitch people know about. Overlays, I guess, are a big deal. Yes. He doesn't like just seeing our one still camera and now our second camera. So really going all in on Twitch.
Yep, we're committed.
But now we're going to talk episode 3.
Episode 3, The Initiative.
Yeah, so this week's game, as teased last week, was The Initiative, published by this little dice dude. Yeah, The Initiative. It is a co-op story, strategy, and code-breaking game that Emily had found from one of our distributors, from a little feature that they were doing. And I didn't know anything about it when Emily said, "Hey, this game looks awesome. We should bring it in." And I said, "All right, well, sounds good." Whatever you think, whatever you want to do.
Is this one of the ones we got a discount on?
I don't remember. I don't think so. It's hard to say. For those of you curious, sometimes our distributors say if you order 8 copies of this game, we'll give you 5% off the whole order. So
really worth it.
Yeah,
in the
big time. Definitely worth having 18 copies of a certain game. Yep. I'm not going to mention on the stream, but we didn't actually get a discount on that either. But I stand by it. I stand by that decision still. So the initiative is designed by Corey Konezka. This person right here. This is their name. However you want to pronounce that. The publisher's Unexpected Games. Oh, say that one more time. I stopped.
Konechka.
That's probably right.
Is how I would guess.
And this little dice dude is Unexpected Games. A game studio that is spearheaded by Corey K. We're just going to call him. Yeah, so it's hard to talk about the initiative without really
completely spoiling it.
So cool.
Don't do that. Yeah, there we go.
We're getting there. We are getting there. So I was really mindful about not wanting to bring out all the components. Oh yeah, that's the other. We should talk about the future of the stream. So what we're going to be doing effective next week is we're going to be splitting the stream into kind of 2 separate streams. Fridays will still be our main shop talk where we'll talk about the game that we played, what our thoughts are, impressions, what we liked, what we didn't like. And on Wednesdays, maybe tentative TBD.
I think Wednesdays.
We're going to do Wednesday. We're going to commit to Wednesdays until Emily tells me that we didn't commit to Wednesdays. We're going to do an unboxing. So our next week's game, which I need somebody to bring me, Abraham, you need to bring me next week's game because I didn't bring it back here before we set up. But we've already unboxed that. So we're going to, next week, we'll be unboxing Mutant Chronicles, Siege of the Citadel, and the myriad of expansions that came with it. That was donated by a friend of myself and friend of the show, Ian. Who said, "Hey, you like new games. I don't like new games. I don't like opening and setting up games. So here, why don't you open, unpack, and then repack this all for me? And you can do it as part of the show." So said, perfect. We'll do that. Yeah. So every Wednesday we'll be unboxing the game, and then we'll be talking about the game at length the following week. But yeah, we're talking about the initiative this week. So
Also, you told Abe to bring you the other game and then didn't say what that other game was.
I don't want to spoil it.
But how can he bring it to you?
You know what? We may not be able to do that game next week, anyways, because I think one of our other team members has that game at home. Has our
Oh,
demo copy of that game.
oops.
So we'll plan B.
TBD.
I know what we'll do.
Okay.
I
It's
know what
one
we'll
of
do.
us.
It's me. I'm the one. Okay. Anyways, it's great. This is class. This is what people tune in for. This is what.
Oh, I bet it is.
This is
all
what
two of our
two
viewers.
viewers have tuned in for. Just wait till we hit the podcast where people love this in podcasting,
Yeah, I hope so.
especially when we reference all the visuals that they're not going to get as part of the podcast. Joe will edit that out, I'm sure. Anyways, should we talk about the initiative?
Yes.
You have the notes. You're supposed to be in the driver's seat of this thing.
Well, I sent you the notes, but whatever. So the initiative, initial thoughts on the initiative. Initiative thoughts. I knew there was a joke in there somewhere.
Is that what that was?
Just had to find it.
I wasn't sure if I should keep letting you workshop it or.
Anyways, I guess I will go first. I really like this game. The story is very cool. It's very engaging. Someone is laughing at me.
Emily got distracted. I need the open copy, not the sealed copy. There's an open copy on the demo shelf.
I worked really hard, okay?
So we maybe let's take a step back and talk about what the initiative is before we talk about first impressions.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Thought we weren't spoiling it.
We're not going to spoil it, but we gotta at least give some context. So the initiative is a 1 to 4 player cooperative, story-based code-breaking game that
Mhm.
has a really neat accompanying comic book. I'm gonna maybe show the first page of the comic. I really like. It's really important to not spoil this game. The premise of the game basically is that, or the premise of the comic, I should say, is that 4 friends in the 90s have found kind of a mystery board game, and they are sitting down to play it. And you, as the real world players, are the players that are playing the game that the kids in the comic are playing. Does that make sense? I know you're distracted.
There's a hole in the bucket in the bottom of the sea in the
Exactly.
hole.
So one thing I didn't bring was the map. I guess I could. Hey, bring me the map. Bring me the map from Playroom on the right. So yeah, it's really hard to talk about this game without getting too spoilery because there's
show
so.
the
yeah.
map there a little bit.
I don't know if I can zoom this in.
Ooh.
Boy, can I? That was impressive. Did that not look good? So this is okay. At the start of the game of the initiative, you will have a mission card. And according to what we've seen, there's just over a dozen missions, but I think there is going to be some like twists and turns along the way. We've already discovered that the initiative as a game has a lot of really cool mysteries to share with you. So this is mission 1. I felt like this was fairly safe to spoil. Thanks, Abraham. Perfect. Yeah, put that right there. That's great. Thank you. Back out. Boom. A little reflective here in the camera, but anyways, one of the biggest components, of course, is this big double-sided map. So the map coincides with the mission for setup, and what happens is at the beginning of every mission, you will have an entry point on the map. Zoom back in. You have an entry point on the map, so you put a little entry token on the map wherever you're starting, and then you have a bunch of these little intel files, and I'm not going to show you what's on the other side of these. So the intel files you're going to stack up on your map based on how many numbers are on each stack, and then you have little cardboard standees to help move your characters around the map as you're playing. So the goal of the game is to solve these missions, and every mission is a little bit different. And so far, what we've seen, we haven't played through the whole game yet, although I think we're committed to seeing it through now.
Oh yeah, we have to.
Is it's all about kind of code breaking and ciphering, and so it's definitely a game that if you're not into puzzles, it's definitely not going to be for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll fundamentally say that the core gameplay, that's kind of the game. So basically, cooperative game built around playing through a series of missions with like a narrative comic book style story, and the core kind of goal is to solve these puzzles, which I'm not going to share or spoil. Okay. that's the basics of it. I don't want to get too much more into detail on that, and then I'll hand it off to you to talk about your first impressions.
Okay. First impressions. Yeah, I think.
Okay,
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was saying the story is really great. I do really enjoy like the concept of playing the characters who are playing the game. It just like adds an extra level of like engaging kind of story, I think. Also, yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of puzzles and figuring things out, so it is right up my alley.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of puzzle games, of ciphers, of code breaking. So I didn't know that was what this game was going to be when we first started playing it. But what I will say is that I've played a lot of board games. I have like 200 and some in my collection, and I was part pre-COVID, pre-pandemic nightmare hellscape. I was part of like a recurring group of serious men playing serious games. So we play new games every week. I sometimes just got to play to an audience of one. Yeah, I like games that are a little bit more like crunchy in mechanics. Like I like games that have a lot of complex mechanics and a lot of interactions, and the initiative has very little of that. So the core gameplay, we'll talk about the actual gameplay loop in a little bit here, but the core gameplay itself is fairly simple. It's basically you're moving around this map and you're taking one of 4 actions to scout and or collect these clues, and the clues correspond to kind of the cipher on the mission card. And so as you're collecting the appropriate clues, you're flipping up. I will show this. I guess I'll take the mission out, but you have this really cool little kind of window thing on camera. And as you're playing, the card, I took the card out so it wouldn't spoil anything, but as you're playing and uncovering the right clues, you'll flip this up, which will reveal more of whatever the hints are for the clue or for the puzzle you're trying to solve. So the core gameplay itself, which maybe that's show the camera. The core gameplay itself is really just about moving around the map and trying to find these clues. And then like where the really dynamic portion of the game comes from is, solving those clues and those puzzles. And so at first glance, it kind of sounds like, I don't know if you've ever played, this might be predating you, but like Mastermind, that old kind of like code breaking game. So a lot of like older players will know that game. It was a classic game. But the whole premise was basically just like you have a set number of clues and you're trying to get like a sequence of letters or words, and the other person's like giving you clues. It's almost kind of like Battleship, but with words. Where it's just like, is this the order of the letters or the words? And no, like, you've got 2 of the 4 right, and then you rearrange them and guess them again. And so I don't really always love stuff like that, but I found myself really engaged in this particular game. I think part of it was that I think you and I had a really good counterbalance of like the way we approach puzzles and words. And then like some stuff that was like, there was one point in early on where it was like we were really struggling with the clue. We had like it was like literally we had like one hint
letter left.
Yeah, and then we're just sitting here looking at the letters we had, and it was just like I don't know what
Like,
this. I don't want to give away the word. But,
no sense.
Yeah, I had a guess that Emily thought was not good, which turned out to be incorrect. And then we got that one last letter, and like literally as soon as Emily flipped the letter and I saw the letter, I was just like, it's this.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that complicated. Like it wasn't a super complicated clue. Like it was one of the early puzzles. And then we had another puzzle later that resolved around a more complex cipher. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't know what any of this means. And I was like, this is stupid. And I hate this game now. And then I just
yeet it out here.
Yeah, I yeeted it right across the room. And then Emily just looked at it, and then I was like taking my turn, and then I turned over to Emily. I'm like, okay, it's your turn. And then she's like, okay, well, here's what this means. And I was like, what is that? How? I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, this was the cipher. It's super simple. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. So, but like, I think that speaks to the kind of game that this is. And I think if you're playing with the right people, like, and have that, like, for me, what I love about board games is always those experiences, that kind of emergent stories and like those shared experiences. And I think that that's something that this game does incredibly well. The gameplay mechanics of the board game are not like super deep, although we're starting to learn that as we play through it, it's starting to get a little bit more complex and a little bit deeper, and they're adding more nuances and layers.
Mhm.
But the amount of like surprises and the amount of like non-linear thinking that you have to do, and like you have to, it's not just like an ABC type of game, if that makes sense. Like, and to be fair, I haven't played any other like escape room games or exit games or any of those, like unlock, exit, or any of those type of games. So maybe this isn't as like mind blowing as I think it is in comparison to those other games. But like, I don't know. There's just some things that this game did that I was just like, after we figured it out, I was just like, wow, like it just, I've never had an experience like this.
Yeah.
And I've played a handful of narrative kind of campaign style games. Like a lot of them are dungeon crawlers, so like Gloomhaven, Descent, things like that. And they're fun and they're engaging. And there is a degree of like, well, I want to see what happens next. But like the narrative of this game is very light because the comic books, each mission so far is only tied to like one page of the comic. And there is an interesting story being told there, but it's being spoon fed to you so slow that like I'm not super necessarily invested in the story just yet, although I am interested to see where it goes. What's making me want to continue to play is seeing what else the game is going to show and do, right? Like it's this crazy amount of like extraneous stuff that happens. There's a certain degree of trust that I'm putting in based on the experience we've had so far, that I think there's going to be a lot more twists and turns ahead of us that are going to continue to surprise and blow my mind. And we'll report back, I think, in episode 4 or 5 when we finish playing through the initiative, to let you know whether or not it has delivered on what our expectations are. But thus far, like, it has been an amazing and mind-blowing experience, and not like anything I've played before in a board game.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. There's a part of like I am intrigued to like read the story and like kind of find out what happens to the characters that we're playing, but it's also more like what other puzzles do we have to find? Like what's the next thing that we have to figure out?
Yeah, and how is it going to like change the core way we interact with the game? Like, again, I don't even want to, and so it's tricky to talk about because like I don't want to spoil anything, because the experience of playing and discovering this is so valuable to what makes it special. And like, so what I my it may be not the best game to talk about on the show because we can't like spoil everything, but I would just say, like, if you like just unique experiences, like just off of that alone, I would say the initiative is a must play. If you like puzzles and like ciphers and code breaking, I think like obviously that's what this game is built around. Now Emily found the puzzle that I struggled with super easy, apparently. And we're still early on, but I mean, like, I wouldn't say there has been anything that's been like, not that I'm not smart, but I'm not particularly smart when it comes to like puzzles and code breaking. So I don't think anything's been like super hardcore. So like, if you're like a hardcore, like cipher person, like this might be a little rudimentary for you. So it may not provide a challenge for you, but that being said, I think it's a pretty cool exposure to that kind of area if you're not super familiar with it already.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that one that I did find kind of easy. It's not that I just figured it out because I'm brilliant. It's like I actually, for whatever reason, I learned that one in grade 3. So who knows? Shout out to my grade 3 teacher.
You don't remember your grade 3 teacher's name?
Nope.
My grade 3 teacher's name was Mrs. Fisk.
I
remember because
Spider-Man.
No, she got sick and went to the hospital, and then I think she might have died.
But
she wrote me a letter. I don't have it anymore, but I remember this letter just because one part of the letter was like, it's really great how much you like to read, but it's important to remember that people can also be friends too. Because that's the kind of kid I was in grade 3.
You can be friends with real people.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So R.I.P. Mrs. Fisk.
I'm trying to think of her name.
We'll stand by.
Grade 3. I think it might have been Madame Boychuk. Because I was in French immersion because I was a French kid. Anyways.
Shout out to Madame Boyard.
Boychuk.
Whatever.
Anyways.
It wasn't even memorable enough for you to remember her name. You're not even sure if that is her name.
No, it is. Now that I remember, I'm sure that's her name.
It's definitely how the brain works. All right.
It is. Isn't it? I don't know. Anyways,
Right into info@palmettoWave.com if that's how the brain works.
just email Natasha.
All right. Yeah, we talked about the comic. The comic is really cool. I guess if we're gonna talk about, like, I don't know if you want to talk about like the things we like, the overall pros and cons, or at the end, or
Yeah. I mean, I think we kind of covered everything in my little agenda there.
we didn't talk about the art style. I think the art style is really unique too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I like the art style because I find the comic is a different art style than like the game, and I think that's an intentional choice because we're reading the comic, and in the like those kids are the ones playing the game. It's
Well, the comic is set in the 90s, and the game, in the context of the comic, is a retro game. And so when you look at the art style of the game, it does kind of have this like 80s kind of monochromatic aesthetic to it, which you're right, like is very distinct from the comic, which has like to me kind of like a Mad Magazine style, like very 90s aesthetic comic to it as well. So it is a really interesting like juxtaposition of like the art of the comic and the art of the game being very distinct. And like the art of the game, like there's not really a lot in terms of, the game itself doesn't have a ton of art to it. Like there are these cards, which are the bulk of how you interact with the game. And then the player cards, which I guess I could have brought, but I didn't, that have each of the 4 players of the game represented with their their character counterparts. But yeah, it aesthetically it does have a very distinct feel to it, and I think it could be described as bland, but I don't think it's meant to be bland. I think it's very intentional. I think the art style is very intentional. I think they did a really good job. Meant
to be like retro, kind of, for sure.
So the complexity of the game, so we can maybe get a little deeper into the rules here, because that's what I've been wanting to talk about. So as is our ancient agreement, I learn the game and teach you the game as we play.
Yep.
And I love learning games, and I love teaching games. So obviously our perspective is going to be different on the complexity. I found this game extremely easy to set up, to play, and to teach. Really what it comes down to is every player gets a starting hand of 4 cards, and every card will have one of, I think, 3 suits on them, which up at the beginning of the game is completely irrelevant. The suits don't actually matter. The only thing that matters to the players at the start of the game is the numerical value on the card. And so the values run from 1, I believe, to 12. And so on your turn, each player can take 1 or 2 actions. They must take 1 or 2 actions. Super producer Abe's coming back to just walk on by and distract us. And so these are the 4 action cards that each player can share. So what happens is, as each player takes their turn, they choose 1 action to take at a time. Let's slide these up a little bit. And they do that by playing a card on the respective action. So you have the run action, the intel action, the gather action, and the regroup action. Now, when you play a card on any given action, the value of the card has to be higher than the card previously played, or you cannot take that action. So this does add some really cool tension to the play, because it's almost like another really popular game, I don't know if you played it, called The Mind, where the whole premise of the game is players have cards in their hand and they're playing cards from their hand. There's 0 communication, and you have to play a card higher than the value before, and basically it's a cooperative game with no communication. And so if I have a card that's number 20 on it, and I play it, and you have 18, well, now you can't play your 18 because it's not higher than 20. And so the initiative kind of has that same idea. There is a little bit more verbal communication. The game says that you're allowed to talk about kind of the general range of your card, but not specific numbers or composition. So when you play a card on the run, you can move up to 3 spaces. When you play a card on the intel, you can choose 1 room on the board and look at 2 of the little clues to see if they're going to be relevant to what you want or not. You can play the gather. If you're in a room with these little clue tokens, you can gather the clue tokens, and if they're relevant, then you flip up the appropriate window on your little clue card. And then the regroup action, which is probably the most important action long term, which allows you to clear any of the other 3 actions, allowing you to basically reset so you can go back up into ascending order. So there's a lot of strategy and communication involved in saying, okay, well, I can take a really beneficial regroup action next turn, or like it'd be great if I move the next couple times, because in my hand I know I have low sequential numbers, right?
Mhm.
And then making that decision between playing one card or two cards, on your respective turns. And then every character also has a special ability, which allows you to discard two cards of your choice to use their special ability. So Emily's special ability is that she can yeet herself across the map, moving up to 5 spaces. And my special ability was I can collect one or two clues, one being in the room that I'm in and one being in the adjacent room. And so knowing how and when to use those actions and when to burn those cards became a really important strategy. And again, not super complex in terms of game mechanics, but still really engaging, I think, to kind of give you enough strategy to want to continue to play. As a campaign game, it also has a win-lose condition. So the lose condition is as you're playing cards and you discard them, the discard pile starts with 4 time cards in it. After you deplete the deck for the first time, you shuffle all of the discards, including those 4 time cards. And then after you start drawing cards, any time cards you draw go straight into the discard pile. And as soon as the discard pile has 3 or more time cards, then you run out of time and the game is over. So there is a constant timer, which is really common in co-op games. But all this is to say that the core mechanics of the game are really simple. Play a card on one of the 4 actions. As long as it's higher than the card that's previously been played on it, you can take that action. And then the special abilities give you a little bit more variability. How did you find the learning component of the game?
I thought it was very easy. Yeah. I mean, very easy to learn, really quick to pick up. Even like, I mean, we've only gotten so far. We've added one extra level of the like layers on the difficulty.
Yeah, like one extra mechanic.
One extra, yeah. We've only added one, but even that, it was pretty straightforward once we figured it out.
And so the other thing too, like, so in co-op games, I know you're still kind of like easing into more of the hobby right now, but in co-op games, there's this concept of the alpha player, where like one player will like kind of tell everyone else how to optimize their turns. Now we're only playing 2 players, so I don't necessarily know that would be different if it was a 4-player game, but it felt like because the moment-to-moment choices on the actual board game portion of it weren't like super crucial, like there was some discussion over strategy, but there wasn't really a great way to like optimize your turn, partly because you're working off of your own private information of what cards you have in your hand. So I don't know what cards you have, so I can't tell you how to play. Also, I don't like telling other people how to play the game. But I felt like there's enough secret information that the players have individually that like one player can't just be like, okay, you do this and then you do that. Like obviously there still can be a component of that, but I don't think it's a game that like particularly lends itself well to that style of kind of alpha playing. And then like so much of the game revolves around solving the missions, and I feel bad that we can't talk more about it, but I just really want to be mindful of not spoiling the missions. But that's really where the cooperative nature of the game comes into play, is the discussion and trying to navigate. So this is almost like secondary really to this. This is the bulk of the game. This is just the tool that gets you ready to do this.
Yeah. Well, and even like you said, we have enough of the secret information that you like need to trust each other. So like with that discussion, it's like, well, okay, I can do this, or I could just, do this other thing and then just end it. And then you just have to kind of trust each other that like, I don't want to make it hard for you on your next turn, but I also like, we do want to get the puzzle. So it's,
and that's the other interesting thing too, is so there is a time mechanic for when the game is over and you lose. But this piece, you can basically do the mission anytime you want. If you think you know what the answer is and all the players are in agreement of like, hey, let's see what the answer is, you can just pop this card up and see if you've gotten the correct answer or not. And that was what I was driving to ultimately, was that if you get this wrong, the story still progresses. Now we're really, because you're really smart, we've managed to win every mission we've done. So we haven't seen what the failure looks like yet, but there is kind of like a, if you win, do this, if you lose, do that. And so the game kind of marches forward ever onward towards kind of the next phase, which I think is really cool. Accessibility.
Yeah. The thing that I noticed, I think, in the spirit of accessibility is that because of kind of the monochromatic color scheme of the game, all of the cards with the different suits and like the different symbols, it's very easy to tell apart that way. And even like the mechanics of like learning the game, it does require the kind of reading comprehension, but also if you're playing, I mean, if you're like me and you get bored reading rules, you just get a friend to teach you the rules. And it's, I mean, it's an easy enough game to pick up. And I think,
Yeah, there's not a lot of language dependency.
yeah,
Like the most, I think, language dependency obviously is in the comic, but that's mostly narrative.
yeah,
If you have one person who can kind of like navigate the setup and the rule nuances, then really it's just a matter of the 4 actions. But even
mhm,
then, the 4 actions are all like, once you know what they are, like it's really straightforward. We didn't really reference these cards. There's a couple times where just because your ability let you move more, so we have a couple
mhm,
like just kind of do a quick like, oh, how far can I move of a run action? Oh, it's only 3. But yeah, there's not really a lot of language dependency in the game, which is great. um, like you said, there are color coded. The cards are color coded to their suits, but also huge icon in the middle of them, so they're fairly
yeah,
distinct. And then the clue tokens aren't color coded at all; like they're just symbols.
mhm,
I would say the biggest potential limitation for accessibility is probably like just visual eyesight, because the
yeah,
clue tokens have to match up
they're,
to your little ciphers.
yeah,
But again, I mean, like that's something like you can like this is pretty mobile, and you can move both the piece and closer to you if you need to see. But I think that would be the biggest thing, is that there is some visual. Um, and as somebody who doesn't have a visual impairment, I can't specifically speak to it, but I think there is a lot of visual requirements, not language dependency, but a lot of visual requirements of kind of navigating the ciphers and things like that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and even like on that kind of same vein, the setup for where to put the little guys
Yep.
is on the back of the card, and it is pretty small.
Yeah.
But if you're in a group, if you have someone designated to do the setup,
That's my designation.
yeah,
Yeah, no, overall, I think this game is incredibly well done. I think it's so cool. I'm so excited to like continue to press through and see what other kind of surprises it has.
yeah,
Like I said, I don't want to spoil it, but there were 2 moments in the game where I was just like I can't believe that like they actually built that into a board game. And so one of them was just like this here. I don't want to spoil, but if you remember this, like the significance here, which also like, so there, I don't want to spoil it obviously, but there was like a point, if you remember in the very first mission, where like I was worried that we were missing some kind of interpretation of the rule.
yeah,
And so that's the other thing too, I would say about this game. If you're like me, and I'm somebody who like very likes to understand every single rule and understand every single thing and like have zero ambiguity about the rules, you do kind of have to just like sit back and let Corey K take the wheel for a little bit, in terms of like trusting that the game will explain things as they need to explain it.
yeah,
And this was interesting too. There was one point in the other puzzle. So this was the first thing that kind of like when we figured that out, is like, oh wow, like that is crazy how like much trust they put in the players to like, you'll figure this out, and then you feel really smart. And it's not like super complicated, it's not like actual code breaking, but we did feel, I felt smart like figuring
yeah.
that out.
I was like, whoa, we figured that out.
Yeah. And then the second big one, obviously, that we almost missed, and that was huge. Like I've never seen something like that before. Like there was one other, and I'll tell you off air because I don't want to spoil it, but there was one other game that did something similar that I thought was really cool. But yeah, just like this really cool complete twist that you don't see coming. Now, what was interesting about that, I don't think we talked about it when we were playing, is the rule book actually does say like, if you're struggling with this, there's a hint on a specific page of the book, not the rule book, the comic book. And the comic book basically just kind of like gives you a walkthrough, because the twist is really important. Like, and if you miss that,
Yeah.
it basically hangs the game up. And so I'm wondering if there are going to be other elements of that where the game is like, hey, if you're feeling hung up, because up until that particular point, there was no clue or like, hey, if you're struggling, do this. It was basically just the game was like, figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think there was a little section in the comic where
In the rules.
Oh, it was in
Yeah,
the rules.
yeah, I remember what you're talking about, where it was kind of like an extraneous clue.
Yeah.
You're talking about like tied to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the character,
Yeah.
like they had the character explain,
Yeah.
this is what I thought of.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you're really holding my hand here.
Yeah, but it's cool though. Like that's the
So
thing.
like they want you to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And like everything is there.
Mhm.
Like it's just you just really gotta like put it together. So I don't know. It's just really impressive to me how much thought went into like how they designed the puzzles and the clues and everything and how it's all tied together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the initiative.
Yeah.
Next week we're gonna talk about an old classic, not a new game.
New to me.
New to Emily. When people ask me what my favorite game is, this is always the game I point to. It's not the game that I'm most excited about. I do like games that have a lot of complexity and a lot of crunch. Carcassonne is almost the opposite of that. Carcassonne is a very, very simple game mechanically, but there's a ton of depth strategically. The reason I always say Carcassonne's my favorite game when people ask me that is A, because it's a bit of a cop-out and it's a game that I will always play. It's a game that I always will enjoy playing. And it's also the game I've played hands down more than any other board game because I had it on my iPhone. So I would play it frequently on the iPhone. So we're going to actually do a double header just to keep it a little bit more interesting for people that maybe have already played or know everything about Carcassonne. We're going to play original Carcassonne, and then we're going to play the brand new Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers. And then so I'll talk about it next week from the context of what's different between core Carcassonne and what's different in Carcassonne Hunter Gatherers. And then Emily will talk about her first impressions and thoughts on both games. All right. Now we're going to transition into our next segment, my favorite segment, Emily's Hearthstone update.
Oh, that segment. Okay. Well, I have unlocked all of the guys.
All of the characters.
All of the characters.
You really got to work on your gender language.
Oh yeah. I guess I don't know. I call everything guys.
That's fine. You're allowed.
Little guys. Even these are little. These are
guys?
the little guys.
These are the little guys.
No, you're right though. I should. That's very not gender neutral. Gender neutral.
Yeah, and just specifically, and I don't want to. I'm not trying to time on this. I'm not trying to be pedantic, but like half the characters in half, two at least. I think it's only two actually of the 9 of the 10 now. Only 2 are female presented. Jane and Proudmoore and Valera.
Yep.
Work on your equality, Blizzard. I think they are. I mean, now there's like 50 hero portraits, so you can change it.
Yeah. Anyways.
But you have all 10 characters unlocked.
All 10 characters are unlocked. I'm working on leveling up the mage.
Jaina.
Yeah, because she's my favorite.
Yeah, I feel like Blizzard is really skewed towards the mage. Like even early Hearthstone, Jaina was the first character you get unlocked, and she's the one you play with the most before you're like through.
Well, because you have to use her to unlock the other ones because she's the most leveled up because she's the one that you play the most to get the other ones.
Have you spent any money on it yet?
Nope.
No, you're gonna?
I'm not sure.
I spent $6 on Hearthstone last 2 days ago.
In addition to Hearthstone, though, I did also just download Portal 2.
Oh, Portal 2 is great.
Yeah.
Are you playing it solo or are you playing it with somebody else?
Solo for now.
I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. This doesn't. I preface it as Emily's Hearthstone corner, but of course this is just gamer corner because Emily's a gamer now.
No big deal.
Portal 2 might be. It's hard to say because I played a lot. I used to play a lot of video games. I try to play a lot. I don't have the time anymore. But Portal 2 might be in my top 10 all-time video games.
Oh wow!
It is hands down the funniest video game I've ever played. I've laughed nonstop through that game. Like it's so funny. You get to the whole lemon speech, like I won't spoil it for you, but and if you don't finish the game, because like again, I don't love puzzle games, but I did play it entirely in co-op. I think it's a great co-op experience. Again, it can be challenging if you don't have the right partner, because again, that whole alpha player thing, like a puzzle game, like I feel like this, I wouldn't want to play the initiative by myself, and I feel like we do kind of balance each other out really well with figuring out the puzzles, but like Portal 2 can be challenging if like one person is really hyper focused on figuring out the puzzles. Yeah. It's also an older game, so it might be challenging to find somebody who hasn't already played it. But regardless, it's a great experience whether you play it co-op or not. I just really enjoy playing it co-op. But I was gonna say, if you don't finish it, you should definitely watch the ending credits. The ending like cutscene is something I still reference to this day, having played Portal 2 like 10 years ago. It's so great.
Yeah, so that's gaming. I also Well, I mean, with my boyfriend, we have started to play It Takes Two
Yes.
on the PS5.
Tell me about that.
Highly, highly recommend. It is very well done. The only thing, and I mean, they obviously did this on purpose. And I mean, it's my personal struggle. But they did it in a way that they kind of almost expect, if you're playing as a couple, that the one who doesn't play as many games will play as the mom character. And then because of that, they make the mom character do the harder things when you have to work together. And that results in some tension because one of us is better at aiming, and that one of us is not the one who has to do the things that require good aim. So,
But only one of you is a gamer, though, right?
well, I mean, I guess we're both gamers now. We're a gamer household.
So It Takes Two, thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Yeah.
Hearthstone, still a thumbs up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really excited to watch your journey through Hearthstone. That's my biggest investment in this whole show, is just hearing about your investment in Hearthstone. And Portal 2. I'm really excited to hear more about your thoughts on Portal 2 as you play through more of it. I know that people are really excited about hearing you talk about a 12-year-old game.
Yeah, 12-year-old game. I also, next on my list is Fallout New Vegas.
Nice. That was Jen's favorite game. Jen's favorite game.
Yeah. I really like the like RPG aspect of games, but the first person shooter is really not what I'm good at with a console.
Yep.
So I'm really hoping that I'm better at it with
The VAT system.
the mouse.
Oh, I see.
Because my thumbs just don't, I can't. I try to aim and it goes like this way, and then I try to fix it and it goes back down this way, and I just like
practice.
Just can't aim.
And also Fallout has the VAT system. I don't know if have you played it?
Where you like zoom in and you like click.
It's like
the percentage,
right, where you stop time. Yeah. Which I know, like my friend Joey, his mom really liked playing games, but she had a similar problem with you where she can't play like fine motor games. And so Fallout was perfect because she could just go into VATS, right? And then let the game, she can still experience the stuff she likes, the exploration and the role playing, and let the game manage all of the combat stuff for her.
Yeah.
Cool. I have been playing, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about my games too. Still trying to chug my way through Assassin's Creed Origins. Three Assassin's Creed games ago. Still really enjoying it, but it's just like I have time for like maybe 10 hours of game time a week. I don't think I talked about it last time in our last video game corner, but I'm playing The Division 2 with my friend Lorenzo, which is a open world cooperative shooter game set in the Tom Clancy universe. Also set in a world beset upon by a massive pandemic. So that's been fun. And we just started playing Baba Is You. Speaking of puzzle games that I don't like, which is a really cool, it's not as old as Portal 2, but it's a couple years old now. Kind of retro 8-bit style graphic game where you play a little white character named Baba, who is either maybe a sheep or a rabbit, I'm not sure. And so I don't want to spend too much time talking about the game, but because I recommended it to you and a couple of the team here. It's a wild puzzle game in which there are physical items on the map, like so rocks and keys and doors and stuff. And then there are also words, and the words will be nouns and verbs. So Baba Is You is typically one of the setting rules. So you are Baba. And as you're playing through different levels, you can actually move the nouns and or kind of verbs around or descriptors. So you can make it so that Baba Is You, you can change it to rock is you or door is you. And then as soon as that changes, you're no longer controlling Baba, you're controlling whatever the other noun word is. And then you can also change the physics of the game to be like, lava is burn, and you can take the burn out and then lava no longer burns. Like, so it's this crazy mind-breaking game where you can like change the literal rules of the world as you're playing. It's really fun and really engaging, but it also is really frustrating. So, because again, you have to have this kind of like non-linear, creative thinking, which I'm not really strong at. So that's my recommendation for the week. Baba Is You. And if you have a friend named Lorenzo, play The Division 2 with him.
Okay.
I wouldn't play it if it wasn't for Lorenzo.
Step 1, get a friend named Lorenzo.
Yep. But not my friend Lorenzo.
Oh, okay. You get a different friend.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because if Lorenzo plays with somebody else, then I won't be able to play with him.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
All right. Final topic.
Final topic, down to shop talk about the shop.
Shop talk, for people who are new to the show, is where we talk about different areas of the kind of our experiences as we're navigating through the tabletop gaming industry as a retail space. Because we're still fairly new to it. We've only officially been open for 3 months.
Officially 2 months. If anyone from the city of Edmonton is listening.
We definitely didn't open the shop before we had all of our approvals and
all
permits
of our
in place.
permits, yeah.
And we definitely have all of our permits in place now. For sure. So definitely don't look at that. Yeah. So this week we thought we'd talk about kind of collaboration and competition in the retail gaming space. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So when we first opened the shop, we got a lot of media attention because we're an Indigenous owned business, and kind of not that we wanted to shift the focus away from the fact that we're an Indigenous owned business, but we didn't want to like get pigeonholed into this idea of like, oh, we're an Indigenous, like that's all we are.
Yeah.
And it's not even really a big part of who we are. I mean, it obviously is a big part of who we are because as Indigenous people, it's just part of our lived experience, but it's also like, it doesn't really inform a lot of the business decisions that we make, really. It does in some ways. Like we'll always prioritize supporting like BIPOC game creators and games that feature BIPOC representation. But I mean, the reality is the majority of games are not, right? There is actually a BIPOC character, 2 BIPOC characters in this game, but like, the average game doesn't really, it's either not a factor or the representation is. But yeah, there was a lot of pushback in terms of like, you know, we also wanted to make sure that, you know, our mandate was really to create a safe and welcoming space for everybody who wanted to explore tabletop games and to help reduce barriers for tabletop gaming, because historically tabletop gaming has been a very white male hobby. Now, obviously that's changed a lot over the last 10 or 15 years, but there still is kind of like a lot of old guard. When you go into a lot of tabletop gaming stores, that'll be either the representation of who's working there or majority of the customers you'll see. Again, that's speaking in generalities, like there's always going to be exceptions to that. And again, the landscape is shifting. But anyways, we got a lot of pushback of like, well, you know, what about this game store or that game store? Like, you know, every game store I've ever been to is inclusive and blah, blah, blah. And so people just kind of like took it as this attack on whatever
like the other game stores of, oh, I didn't realize they weren't inclusive, but that's not what it was.
Yeah. And like the reality is like, and this is going to get a little Edmonton specific, but like we've worked closely with Justin Barassa and his business partner, whose name I never remember, previous to the Gamers Lodge. You know, we did a kind of a co-sponsored game donation to Treaty 8 when they were trying to do a game drive for one of the communities with Brian Flowers at Tabletop Cafe. And just recently we've had both TAPS games on the south side of Edmonton, and there was one other, Wonder Harbor from downtown Edmonton, and also Grand Prairie and somewhere in BC, I can't remember where. These are all game stores that we, you know, have like varying levels of relationships with. It's not quite as developed yet because it's a new game store, but our tangential friend of ours opened that kind of LARP game store on the West End. Michael. Sorry, I don't know why I'm putting you on the spot because I don't remember the name of his shop either. Anyways, the point being,
I would have known.
The point being, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, when we first opened the store, like we were kind of somewhat concerned, I guess, or mindful of like, it is a competitive market, especially in Edmonton. There's like 12 or 13 game stores. Oh, you know who else? Industrial Park Games has also been very open and friendly with us. There's a lot of game stores in the greater Edmonton area. There's like 12 or 13 or maybe even more in the greater Edmonton area, and that's like dedicated hobby spaces. That's not including like Walmart that's moving into board games, not including like some of the tangential places. Chapters and Indigo now have like a board game section. Cam sent me a picture from Part Source. And they had like $5
car parts store?
Yeah, Part Source. They had like 5 boxes of Keyforge sitting on their shelf, like not like the individual, but like the big like bulk boxes of Key Force sitting on their shelves. Everybody wants a piece of the game.
I almost wonder if that was like an ordering error. Like they were looking. Well, you know, car parts, like keys, something.
Yeah, but Keyforge is specifically only by one distributor. So like that would be a weird. What Cam told me is that Part Source tends to like just kind of like buy things at auction or buy things like through third-party channels. So it might have been a game store closing down. Anyways, there was a lot of like concern on our part about, you know, it's a competitive market and how well are we going to be received coming into a crowded market. But I mean, the reality is a lot of the game stores have been proactive in reaching out to us. So we had already had the relationship with Gamers Lodge before we opened from the consulting work we had done. And Brian from Tabletop Cafe, like I had some interactions with him kind of tangentially. And then, you know, we talked to him a little bit before we opened the shop just to see if there was more room for collaboration. But yeah, like once we opened the doors, the fellow from Wonder Harbor Comics and Games and Taps just reached out to us. Industrial Park Games reached out to us. So, you know, it's really been nice to see, like, yes, we're technically kind of in competition for each other we're in similar business, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that you and I talked about when you first started was kind of like, this is what the landscape, my perspective of the landscape of games look like obviously, again, I'm speaking in generalities, but like Warp 2 tends to really, for the North side at least, be the go-to place for Magic the Gathering cards and Magic the Gathering games. And maybe that's not everyone's experience, but like that's always been my perspective of Warp 2 and of course comics. Red Claw Gaming, like they really lead, I think, especially, again, I'm talking very North side centric, but like in terms of Warhammer and miniature stuff, although I know Taps has got a really well-developed play space and like a huge selection and really knowledgeable staff in the Warhammer universe and the games. Point being is that like every store kind of has a little bit of their niche of what they do, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, like it was really clear that there were certain things we wanted to do: board games, role-playing games, and really that's it. We're not interested in getting to Magic the Gathering because we don't have anyone on the team that has that expertise. Comics, like they take up so much space, and like again, we don't have that same knowledge base. So like for us, you know, we're not necessarily looking to compete with those stores and just trying to create like or add, I guess, to the landscape of games. But it's been really nice to see that there are a lot of game stores that are really open to kind of more of a collaborative relationship rather than a competitive one, which has been really great to see. And I think a couple of the game stores too, I think Wonder Harbor specifically, or maybe it was Taps or maybe both, basically just said like if there's ever a point where like a customer was looking for something and we didn't have it, then, you know, they'd be happy to lend us a copy and then we could replace it or even buy it from them for cost, which is a huge like offer, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's really reflective of a lot of game stores understanding that like there's a lot that goes into a customer's decision on which game store is going to be kind of their home game store, their community game store. And I think for us, where we are, a big part of it, and I think my experience, and I know you work more in the retail space than I've had the opportunity to recently, is that a big part of it is just the geography. A lot of people are like, yeah, it's great
like
to see a game store
right down there
in our neighborhood. Yeah. Like, and you know, that's one thing I think I take for granted in living in a city like Edmonton is that I have a car. So, you know, before I opened the retail space for Medway, I was always able to just drive to whatever game store I wanted to. I probably wouldn't drive specifically to the south side, no matter how great Taps is, and they are great, but I'm not going to drive 35 minutes to a game when Warp 2 is 5 blocks from my house, right? But that's something I think that has been a huge factor. And I think a lot of the stores that have been open a lot longer than us recognize that like they have their kind of specialization in their niche, and our niche is going to be a kind of more that focus on accessibility in games, and be bringing in like more unique games, like especially focus on RPG stuff, all those like crazy fun indie RPGs that a lot of stores just can't bring in because, you know, we have extraneous streams of revenue that a lot of other game stores don't have. We don't just have that one business, right?
Yeah, I think, well, and like with the like niche, like it's almost good for us to not try, and it's not that we're like not trying, but like we're not we're choosing intentionally to not get into some of the more like hardcore, I guess might not be the right word, but like Magic the Gathering and like David, this is a serious podcast that we're trying to do.
Serious show for serious men and women. Yes, I understand what you're saying. The more the hobbies, the side of the hobby that requires more dedication.
Yeah.
More investment in knowledge, more investment in cost. Yeah, and you're right. We don't want to get too deep into that. Like, we're happy to spend the money in bringing product in, but yeah, like I don't like. I don't love Magic the Gathering. I do love board games. I love role playing games.
Yeah.
So for us, it's just about focusing on things that we're passionate about.
Yeah. Well, and like that can like that's I mean that's almost already been like our own niche, you know, like our niche is bringing in those RPGs. Like just earlier today, we're emailing back and forth with someone to bring in like that person. I think they said they like print it in their house and they like are shipping from their apartment, like these little indie made RPGs that look really cool. And we're able to bring those in because of, you know, like
Because it's who we are.
because yeah, like that's like specifically what we're looking for to bring in to be our niche.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hoping that like that's the universal sign for niche. I'm hoping that,
Niche.
you know, as we continue to move down that area, like other game stores will kind of like recognize that there are things that we do well that maybe they don't or can't invest in, and vice versa, right? So like we've said, because I've had probably, I don't know, I've seen probably 4 or 6 customers come in, ask about Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, and we just send them up the road to Warp 2.
Yeah.
Warp 2 does that. They're always going to do it better. Like, we're not even going to bother trying to
Mhm.
like, you know, because for us too, it's always been about expanding the work and the mission of Pimetta Way, which is to introduce gaming to more people,
Yeah.
reduce those barriers, and you know, on the consulting side of things, showcase the benefit of games beyond just like a fun hobby. And so we can
Mhm.
still focus on doing that and not have to worry so much about like, you know, squeezing as much sales as we can out of every store or out of every element of the store, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So we are it is definitely more of like a collaborative environment, I guess, than competitive, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean in the spirit of collaboration and working together, I mean this is not set in stone yet, but we're in the works of collaborating with some of the other game stores that we have mentioned in the area in Edmonton to do on Twitch a 24-hour live stream Dungeons and Dragons game. So that should be fun. Stay tuned for info about that. That's all I have. I don't even have any other info.
You really hyped it up.
I mean,
all right,
I'm gonna play.
So the pitch here is that we're working in collaboration with other game stores to host 24-hour stream of RPGs fueled by donations, kind of similar to what Extra Life already does, but a little bit more centralized to the Edmonton region, in collaboration with some of the other game stores. So the goal here is to raise some money for charity. I think we're still kind of focusing on the charity, trying to decide which charity is going to be the best one to support. Something that, you know, obviously is kind of in line with the use or the mandate of kind of games and engagement. So it'll be a 24-hour RPG stream with volunteer GMs, some from our staff, some from other stores, open to participants. And then we will also be kind of setting up some dates in conjunction with other stores, saying like, you know, from this date to that date, you know, any percentage of whatever sales we have will be donated towards this charity. And so we'll kind of like collect it as a group and then hopefully have like a nice big lump sum donation to the respective charity that we've chosen.
Yeah.
Same thing you said, just with more words. That's all I bring to the table is just more words. Yeah, and that was an initiative that was born from you and Abraham and Catherine.
Mm-hmm. Mostly Abraham.
Don't sell yourself short.
Well, okay.
All right, well, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we have for Shop Talk.
All right, hit him with our closing line.
Bye.